This is the JP8 report with James Pierce. This is episode 19. Title is And It Continues. Welcome to the JP8 report. As I said before, this is James Pierce. If you've never seen me before, coming from Coppers Cove, Texas. Before we get started, just remember I'm on a variety of platforms out there for my podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and like it and share it out. The only way we get the word out about our podcast here is for people out there to, if they like it, share it out to their friends so they can see it too. And then I'm almost just a few of them on Stitcher or Stitches. I think it's called Stitches, and there's a whole bunch of them. Rumble and Podbean and Google Podcast and YouTube, Facebook. There's a whole. You would not believe how many different podcast sites there are. And plus you can email me at jp8report@gmail.com. Okay, so the name of this one is And It Continues. This may not be a super long podcast today. I've done a couple of them this week, but this immigration thing is out of control. Day in and day out, we keep hearing the same thing from the Democrats. They say everything's under control. What's under control? The ability to just let people infiltrate into our interior of our country unimpeded and unaccountable. That's wrong. You don't do it in the Army when you're on patrol. You don't on guard duty. You don't let just people just walk right on through. You always check. We at our courthouses and federal buildings, everything. You always check ID. You got to know who's in and what they're doing. Just the point. I mean, I'm a Texan. I live here. Why in the world would we just let people walk into our country, into my state, and where they are so overwhelmed at these little transit sites that they get the people, they log them in. Oh, matter of fact, these people are crossing the Rio Grande River and walking straight up to a Customs Border Enforcement officer and turning themselves in. The CBE guys get their names, their ages, and tell them, hey, we need you to come back here and state your case. And, oh yeah, you can go now. So we're going to let people just walk away. And we got their fingerprints, their name, and that's all. And if they're going through Brownsville or McAllen or Laredo or Del Rio, where do they go from there? Helena, Montana? Seattle, Washington? Plattsburgh, New York? Bangor, Maine? Fort Worth, Texas? Where? This has got to end. This has got to end now. There's something that has to be able to be done besides just legislative court battles. And can we deploy? I mean, we got Operation Lone Star going on here in Texas. That we got National Guardsmen that are deployed on the border, and we got DPS supplementing them. But there's only so much they can do. If you take these National Guardsmen, they only do this part-time. And these DPS officers, how do you justify putting your DPS on the border and leaving the rest of the state unprotected? These DPS officers got sectors they gotta operate in. So if like Governor Abbott, if he's got to take our state troopers and put them on the border because he has to, because the federal government isn't doing their job, is leaving the rest of us, putting more pressure on the local police departments and the sheriff departments. We got to put an end to this. This is crazy. They got to stop. They got to stop them at the border. They got to. They got to. These people are saying that they're coming to the United States. They have no intention of staying in Mexico. You know what? Tell Mexico they need to fortify their southern border permanently, because what they're doing to us, they're doing to Mexico also, because they're transiting 1,000 miles plus in through their territories to get either to Tijuana or to Matamoros or in the Rio Grande sector. The RGV is what they call it. They're even toying with ideas. No, they're not toying. They are of putting illegal aliens in hotels. I think they were talking about San Antonio. So much for the tourist industry there, because where are they going to stay? Who's paying this tax bill for hotel rooms? I mean, we're gonna spend, if they're in San Antonio, the government rate for San Antonio for per diem, it's got to be for hotels, got to be close to $100 a night. That's $100 a night. Just imagine 500 hotel rooms at $100 a night, and then you got to feed them also, and give them transportation. That's a massive bill. Your tax dollars, not hard at work. It's being wasted when it could be spent on Americans here at home. Tell me another country in the world that will let people come across the borders unimpeded and to do what they want. Okay? Man, I just can't fathom staying in a hotel. It's been a year and a half since I stayed in a hotel room. And that was for a business convention for the franchise I'm in. And we got people like, they illegally cross our border and they get to stay in hotels. Wow. I hope they're not getting room service. And this is happening all across the United States. There are people that are mad. There are immigrant aliens that are applying for citizenship, and they're all upset that they're not even given the opportunity to do the same thing as these illegal aliens are doing. Which causes a lot more problems. I mean, you're at wit's end. Now, I was just talking about these immigrant aliens applying for U.S. citizenship and for being an entry into the United States so they can actually work legally. And you got all these other people coming through illegally. What if you're a landowner down in the RGV or all the way up to El Paso, all the way through Yuma, all the way through San Diego? Okay, you're a landowner. You're a homeowner. You're on your land, and your property's breached, and you have it posted. You got your purple post. You got no trespassing, and and people come across, and they continue to come across, and they won't listen to you. All they're doing is speaking Spanish. Well, most people down on the southern border pretty much speak Spanish. You got there and you tell them no trespassing, and they ignore you. What do? Pump shotgun shells into the air to give them warning? And then what happens then? Do they escalate it or de-escalate? Do they run? Or does someone pull a weapon out and attack you? What happens when something like that happens? What happens to their neighbors? We're not standing for this anymore. If the federal government won't help us, we'll help ourselves. You have the natural breakdown of society because the rule of law is not being enforced. The federal government's job is to keep us safe. If you're allowing people to breach our border and walk in unimpeded, you're asking for a problem that's probably going to eventually escalate into violence, whether it be from the people breaching the border or people protecting their families and their property. This has got to end. This has got to end. The Biden administration's got to understand they failed. Okay? I know it's a change of administration, but the Trump administration figured it out. And they figured it out and it stopped. I don't know who's pulling what strings in the Biden White House is telling President Biden what to do. He has to ignore them because it's going to spiral out of control. And we, the American people, are going to pay a price for it. And we don't need that price. We've been through too much. I checked the other day, 540,000 people in our country died in the last year or so from the coronavirus. We've lost enough people. We've endured enough pain. You know what? Let us rebuild the rest of our economy and our country back again. We have freedoms in this country, and if freedom is not to allow every single living person to cross our border because they don't have the economic fortitude in their own countries and they're poor. You know what? There's a lot of poor people in our country. A lot of poor people in our country would love to have the chance for a better life. But when people come in our country illegally and they take the jobs from Americans away from them, we're doing them a disservice. We're doing them a disservice, and it has consequences to it. What happens with these families and these unaccompanied minors when they get passed throughout the United States, and then school-age kid, what do they have to do? They got to go to school. So if they're poor, they can't afford to get a private school. So what do you do then? You send them to school. They don't speak English. So what does the school district do? Whether they're independent or consolidated or unified, you hire people who can speak Spanish, and you have to develop an ESL program. Now, Spanish is not even native to that community. Let's say they're in Michigan or Iowa or something like that. Now you have to have teachers on staff that can speak Spanish and English. And they have to instruct these kids and teach them, but they're poor, they don't know how long they're going to be there, and they barely speak fluent Spanish from a dialect you probably don't even know, because just so you know, if you haven't taken a foreign language in high school or even college, when you take Spanish, you don't learn Mexican Spanish. You don't learn Guatemalan Spanish. You don't learn Honduras Spanish or even El Salvadoran. You learn European Spanish. Two different languages. I mean, they got the similarities, but, it's European Spanish, and what you're doing, you're using European Spanish to teach them, to try to get them to learn English, and when they go home, all they do is speak Spanish. It's just a circle, okay? And, who pays these teachers? Property taxes, city taxes, state income taxes. If you live in a state that has a state income tax. More tax dollars going down the drain on a family member, on a family that could still be in El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Panama, Mexico. But the vast majority of the illegal aliens coming across the border are from the Triangle countries. And they're susceptible to the coyotes that are getting them across, and extortion, and trafficking, human trafficking, drug trafficking. It's a money making scheme. They'll call this the diversion on one side of the border. Then on the other side, where there's opening, they'll send their people through. Is this by design? Are the people in charge in our country purposely allowing this to happen so they can get as many people from Latin America into our United States to declare them legal residents in our country, and then eventually make them citizens in our country? I hope not, because they're circumventing the law. They're creating an insurrection inside of our country, which is against the Constitution, against the law. If they're purposely trying to orchestrate one-party rule, permanent one-party rule, to get their way politically, it's a coup. Okay? There's an overtake of power to prevent the opposition from ever having a chance to be able to lead our country. You know, I'm a staunch Republican. I have my beliefs. But I do know from time to time the Democrats are going to be in charge like they are now. But when you have people in charge that are leading down a path that leads to socialism or tyranny, authoritarian type government, that has to end. And the only way you're going to get out of that is you vote. Vote these people out. You pray that we'll survive long enough where we can vote these people out. Even in these heavy Democratic races that they say were untouchable, put a candidate up, and he may think, oh great, I'm going to lose all this money. It takes money to win. You know, if you convince enough people that you're running and you put money into that campaign, the Democrats are going to divert money from their other campaigns to help fund that one. So you're taking away from the other races, which is a help for the ones that are in a really actual contest. And a little bit of political stuff for you to learn. There was a deal in the paper this morning about how I saw it was Dick Durbin was on being interviewed. They are actually thinking about trying to do away with the filibuster because they can't get no leftist socialistic bills through the Congress because the Republicans won't let. They are standing their ground. And these Republicans are standing their ground. You need to help them out. You need to let them know that we're thinking about them. Do not let them take that filibuster away. Don't. That's the only thing that's saving our country from tyrannical rule. We can live by a 50+1 majority, and be long. What did Chuck Schumer said? Ruled by short-term legislative rule. Well, our country is hundreds of years old. You need to make sure our law is correct for our country. You shouldn't pass a bill to read the bill, to find out what's in it. The fog of war. Oh, really? Come on. Well, we have stuff that we have to do in our country. And the number one thing is protect our borders and protect our citizens and execute natural rule of law in our state and keep our taxes low. That's the way it should go. That's the way it should happen. And the only way you do that is getting out there and get your people. And we had a new guy say he's going to run for Attorney General in Texas. You may not like our Attorney General in Texas, but he does a job. Same thing with our governor. And Ken Paxton and Greg Abbott, they're very effective and they care about us. And I tell you, I'm voting for both of them. That's from what I've seen, unless someone can show me something different. They've bent over backwards for months and years to protect the Texas citizen. And there's in other states, there's really, really, really good attorney generals out there that care about their states too, and the governors. And they'll do what they need to do. One is not Andrew Cuomo. He needs to go. But the vast majority of governors out there love their states, and they'll do what it takes to protect their states. But we have an awesome one here. But we have to get this immigration under control, or there's going to be something seriously bad happening in along the southern border, because people are just going to say, hey, I've had enough. This is what I'm going to do. And then we'll have to deal with the consequences. And I hope it does not come to that, because it doesn't. All the president needs to do is say, hey, he doesn't even say I made a mistake. All he has to do is say, I have a change of policy. This is what we're going to do, and it's in effect right now. Let's get it done. And then he needs to get senators together, and they need to discuss the immigration situation. And I'm not talking about getting 10 Democrats and 10 Republicans. You need to get people that are willing to talk and negotiate and put a bill together. And not just play hearsay and say, hey, I heard your side, y'all are gone by, and then go right back and get all the Democrats together and pass a bill. It doesn't need to happen like that. And all you're going to do is cause dissension in the Republican Party, because they're going to hate the Democrats and they're not going to listen. And we're back to square one again. The Republicans get in control and they're not going to want to listen to Democrats. Or everyone has good ideas. We just got to stop this bickering and get things working. It's happened all the way up until like the mid '90s. We've had Republican presidents and Democratic Congresses, and then we've had Democratic presidents and Republican Congresses, and they got along. And I would venture, since Pelosi and Schumer came on the scene, it's all disintegrated in the bitter partisan politics. So, this is my broadcast today. Remember, protect and defend the country. Protect and defend it. That's our utmost goal is to have. And when you let people just walk across our border unimpeded with a promise, I promise I will come back and see you and judiciate my case. No, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Come on. Who's going to go? Ask these people that got these cash bail things in these other states. You give someone a written warrant and say, you promise to come back? No, they're not going to come back. They're going to hide from you. We need to protect our borders, protect our people, and get our rights back. This is James Pierce with the JP8 report, signing off with episode 19, and it continues.